Hi everybody, welcome to the Marshall Hangout. I'm very pleased to welcome Lionel Foster today. He's 2002 Marshall Scholar and another one of my first years, and it's great to have him here today. I'm not going to say too much about him because I'm going to let him introduce himself, but thank you for coming, and well, here you go, Lionel.
Well, thank you all for being here. When you say 2002, it makes me feel old, Mary. And you look exactly the same, and I actually have all this gray in my beard, which I don't like, but thank you for having me. So yes, class of 2002, I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, went to Johns Hopkins University undergrad, I did 3 years on the Marshall, did social policy and planning, and then regional and urban planning studies, master's degrees at the London School of Economics, and then studied creative writing at Goldsmiths. Came back to Baltimore, became a journalist and a writer, worked in government, and I'm with you today in my capacity mostly as founder of something called the Baldwin Prize. It is a scholarship and essay competition at my old high school alma mater in Baltimore. So by the end of, I'll put up some slides and we'll talk, and then I'd love to answer any questions you might have and have a real conversation. But my hope is by the end of this conversation, you will be utterly convinced that if someone like me, I should say by day I do communications for a public policy organization. By night / in my pajamas, mostly on Zoom now, I am in law school, getting my JD at Georgetown. So if someone like me, who half the time does not know if he's coming or going, can run a pretty substantial nonprofit project on the side with my kind of schedule, then you absolutely can do it. And frankly, some of you can do an even better job than me. So I will share my screen and my presentation, and we can talk. Let's see. All right. Mary, can you nod if you can see that? Okay, fantastic. So a conversation today, how to become a philanthropist when you're broke and in your spare time. So that's definitely been my story. So this is my high school, Baltimore City College High School in Baltimore, Maryland. I don't know exactly how they got this shot. I assume it was using a drone, but it's beautiful. City, I'm told they drill this into you from your very first moment stepping into the building. We're the third oldest public high school in the country, founded in 1839. We refer to it as the Castle on the Hill. Our rivals, so we're more humanities oriented. Our rivals across town, Baltimore Polytechnic Institute, refer to us as the dump on the hump. But that is only because they are jealous. This beautiful building, I'm told, is in the neo-collegiate Gothic style, was built in the 1920s. So it was a magnet school. I grew up in a rough part of town, and this was a public school in Baltimore that you could be really proud of, that had this tremendous pedigree. So when they let me in, I was really happy. And the place has such a rich history. So after I finished at City, I went to Johns Hopkins University, studied creative writing. And then from there, did the Marshall, became a journalist, was very much kind of public interest in urban affairs journalism. So let me see, in 2015, I get this letter from my school welcoming me, inviting me to be inducted into their Hall of Fame. And I just thought that was, so first of all, I mean, what kind of high school has a Hall of Fame? And so some of our notable alumni are the composer, Philip Glass, the writer, writers Russell Baker, Leon Uris, philanthropist Joseph Meyerhoff, David Rubenstein, I think founder or co-founder, founded the Carlyle Group, a big private equity fund. We've produced 7 members of Congress, 3 governors, 1 Nobel Prize winner, 2 Pulitzer Prize winners, and 4 mayors. And so many of these people have been inducted into the Hall of Fame. So I get this letter and saying they want me to join them. And I think that's utterly ridiculous. So you see these, bold print names here. Meanwhile, I mean, this is still kind of how I think of myself, as the sometimes shy, but definitely academically oriented kid. You see, I'm not showing my teeth because my teeth were still very crooked. And it was just a little too embarrassing for me to do that. So when I got that letter, I kind of still thought of myself like this. And the two just didn't really add up for me. But, if I'd had a vote, I would not have voted myself in, but I didn't have a vote and other people were doing it. So I said, okay, if they want to bestow this honor upon me, then, I want to do something to make it less about me. And I just had so much gratitude for my school because it led me to Germany. I actually spent my senior year of high school as an exchange student in Germany because of the teaching and the resources at my high school. It also led me to a full scholarship at Hopkins. Now you all may think, I couldn't blame you if you thought this photo was taken, say, in the 1970s. It's in black and white. I'm wearing suede. I have an afro. No, this was in, I want to say this would have been 2001, 2002, shortly after it was announced that I'd won the British Marshall Scholarship. Some people say I look a lot like Ben Carson, but this photo was actually taken in this millennium. And then it also this was the photo I took. I became a columnist at the Baltimore Sun. Here, less hair on my head, maybe even more facial hair going on. So I put all this up just to show that my high school meant a lot to me. So gateways and pathways to opportunity in America, as I think all of us know, are so bifurcated and segregated by race, by gender, and a city, as we call my high school for short, was the place that just opened up so much for me. So when I got that letter, I cried. I didn't think I was worthy. And I thought really hard about how to make my induction speech and that whole occasion about other people. And as I thought about that, I thought about this man, James Baldwin. So he was a writer and a humanitarian. His memories and legacy has had a real resurgence recently with like the filmmaker Barry Jenkins. I made a film out of his book, If Beale Street Could Talk. There was a tremendous documentary that for 90 minutes or so used nothing but Baldwin's words. It was fantastic, called I Am Not Your Negro. So when I thought about the kind of message I wanted to convey to students at my school, I wanted to tie together how City was the place that taught me how to write. And to learn how to write is to learn how to think, and maybe even to learn how to recognize what it is you feel and how to use words and thoughts to begin to navigate your place in the world, or your potential place in the world. And I was introduced to James Baldwin's writing while I was at City, and Baldwin did a better job, I think, than anyone. This was a gay Black man in mid-20th century America, when segregation and racial bias was even more rampant than it is now, who had the audacity to say that, what is true for me as a human being is likely true for everyone else. And if I have the the honesty and the integrity to look within myself at how the situation in America and the world are affecting me, then maybe I can help other people as well. So that's the kind of project I wanted to initiate at my high school. Can we use the written word? Can we come up with a prompt that will encourage students to look deep within themselves and think about what truths do they owe to themselves? What are their social and moral obligations to other people? And how do you use a writing exercise in the essay form, of which Baldwin was a real master, to help connect the writer to his or her own thinking and feeling, and then those thoughts to other people. So I knew that I wanted to start a scholarship and essay competition in James Baldwin's honor that would introduce students at my high school to those kinds of concepts. So that was the goal. And okay, so at that point I had a few months. I think I got the Hall of Fame welcome letter. Let's say that was May 2015. The ceremony was going to be in October. So between May and October, I had to figure out, how do I start a scholarship fund and go. So as I started looking around, by this point, now I've lived and worked in Washington, D.C., not too far from Baltimore, since 2013. So at this point, I'm in D.C., I'm making some calls, I'm doing some research, and we have a tremendous community foundation in Baltimore. But it just looked, that was the first thought. Okay, I know about our local community foundations work. There are a lot of community scholarships, endowed there. Maybe I can work with them. And I highlighted this section from their website. To endow a new scholarship, the minimum have you is $200,000. And then, I checked my wallet and my pockets. I looked under the sofa cushions. I couldn't find $200,000. So I was thinking, all right, what the heck am I going to do? But as I looked around, I discovered I had never heard of the concept. It was something called nonprofit fiscal sponsorship. And there was an organization, it was then called, I think they were called the Greater Homewood Community Corporation, but soon thereafter renamed Strong City Baltimore, that provided a range of community services, a community-based nonprofit, one of which was nonprofit fiscal sponsorship. So using nonprofit fiscal sponsorship, you have Strong City Baltimore's nonprofit status. And they took applications from people who had, more ideas and grit than money, much like myself, who wanted to start a philanthropic project. And this is everything from, we have people in the nonprofit fiscal sponsorship program who use, say, cooking to teach young Black women skills and help build community. I mean, just about anything you could name, Strong City Baltimore and other organizations like it are helping people. It's like a startup organization for people not in the for-profit space, but in the nonprofit space. And the deal is that, they'll take a certain percentage of what you raise, but in exchange, you have all the back office and compliance support you need. And when I found out about this, I thought, oh, okay, that was pretty tremendous. And that's how I got started. So by October, I was set up with Strong City Baltimore. I think I invested $1,000 of my own money just to get an account going. I think this was the case at the time, but since then the agreement has been, you have to raise at least $5,000 per fiscal year, which, considering, some of their overhead expenses and the kind of support they provide, I think is a really good deal. That's I think the $5,000 threshold is enough that as the social entrepreneur, if you want to use that term, you have to be serious. It has to be a commitment to raise that you know, a decent amount of money, but it's not so high a bar that it puts out of the reach of people like myself. So I appreciated that. So by the time I gave so I go back to City, I give my induction speech, and eventually this is what we called it the Baldwin Prize. I worked with the school, and this is what it became. So I worked with the core group of teachers, including the head of the English department. In the fall, we might start a little earlier, sometimes late summer, early fall, to develop a prompt. We've had prompts that have been, for example, one that really stood out to me was write about a moment when you felt empowered. And some of the feedback I've gotten from the teachers is that one of the teachers who teaches 12th grade English, she said it wasn't until maybe well into college, when she was in high school, she did not have a writing assignment that required her to write that deeply and thoughtfully and autobiographically. So of course, it's pretty common that if students have to write something, a term paper or something shorter, they're given a topic, they're given someone else's work to study, and they have to, you know, try to write something smart and thoughtful about that. But she said this was really unique in her experience because we're asking high school students, maybe they wouldn't have to do something like this until they wrote essays for college acceptance as part of their application packets for college. But here they were 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, being asked to think deeply about themselves. Another prompt we had was, it was a really powerful a few years ago when instead of students just writing about themselves, they were invited to interview someone else. And one prompt we had was, you were to ask the interviewee to tell you about a moment and a place in time that really changed their life, that changed how they thought about themselves and what was possible for them and what they wanted out of their life. So in fall, we developed the prompt. In January, I post the prompt on the Baldwin Prize website, thebaldwinprize.org, and I go to school, and I spend really just 5 to 10 minutes pitching the prompt and the Baldwin Prize to every class that's going to participate. The other thing I should say is that we structure the prompt so that as many teachers as possible can make it part of the curriculum. So here I am, I'm a non-teacher, but working with teachers and crafting something that they and the students can really use so that it fits in squarely with the curriculum. And then the essay becomes not just something they can do in their free time, but an actual assignment. So the first year, when it was not part of the curriculum, it was something on the side. We had a grand total of 2 students participate. But after it became part of the curriculum, in recent years, we've had as many as 400 students participate. So I feel like I'm giving a stump speech that day in January when I pitch the prompt to students. I might speak to 15 to 18 classes each individually in a single day. In February, we have writing consultations where I bring in people with writing experience. These are journalists, it could be grant writers, some of them. The way I pitch it is, if you have had to write something and have it edited for, for any kind of public consumption, then you have enough writing experience to help our students think about some of the intricacies of the writing they want to do. There's usually 1 writing consultant to 3 students, in 30-minute sessions, and the students love it because they're getting this really focused attention from adults they respect who are not their teachers or their parents. And the volunteer writing consultants love it because they just see so much promise in the students. In March is the judging process. There have been years when I've made use of 100 judges from 3 or 4 different countries, and they do this all virtually. And then the award ceremony is in April. This is a photo from our award ceremony. The young woman is Trinity James. She was in 9th grade. She won 3rd place. And the man to her left, I guess our right as we look at the screen, is her father. And I'm trying to remember what the prompt was for that year. No, that was the prompt I already mentioned. So you had to interview someone else. And the assignment was, the question for the interviewee was for them to tell you about a moment and a place in time that really changed their life. And during the award ceremony, it was all built around the winning students. So each of the winners we had, in that particular year, it was 9th and 12th graders who participated, because those happened to be the teachers who could make it part of the curriculum. So the award ceremony was built around those student winners. Each of them, they found out they won that day, and they were asked to read their essay. And then you give them a bit of a heads up so that some of their parents know to attend. So the student reads the essay, and then I asked the parent or whoever their interviewee was to say a few words about what it was like to share their story. Trinity's essay was short, but I'm going to read it to you, and it captures some of what I think a lot of what the Baldwin Prize was about. And one last thing I'll add before I read you this: the students had the choice of either writing from their own perspective about what the interviewee said, or you could have written it as told to account. So you the student might write in the voice of the interviewee. So this is Trinity writing kind of as her father. This was her take on what he told her. When you were a few months old, I got laid off from my job and started to sell drugs to make ends meet. I sold drugs because I was low on money during this time. I had to hustle to take care of you and your mom. I did this when I was younger, but I never got arrested for it. It's like having an addiction, feeling like you can do anything and get away with it. I love making fast money and having control over others. Your grandmother told me that hustling was going to eventually send me to prison, and it isn't fair to your mother not knowing about me selling drugs. I told your mother about it, and she felt that it was best to keep you and her away from me for your safety. Gosh, I missed you all, but I was concentrating on getting that money. I started to make a lot of it. I was obsessed with my job. Unfortunately, I got caught and had to pay the price. I was in jail for a few months and eventually ended up going to prison for some years. While I was in jail, I used to write letters to you, your mother, my family, and friends. Your mother showed me pictures and videos of you. Having the eyes of an angel, you were the prettiest baby I've ever seen. I missed your first words. I missed your first steps. Also, I missed your smile. I used to think what it was like if only I had listened to my mother and stopped my hustling ways. I will not take my freedom for granted anymore. Life in prison is different than being home. Getting up when told, going to sleep when told, and following the directions of the correctional officers, and making sure that you are safe from other inmates trying to hurt or kill you. Later I learned, good news, it was time to be released. I'm going home. I decided I wasn't going to miss that place. I'm now able to see how you have grown into a beautiful young lady. I miss you and your mother so much. Being away from your loved ones teaches you to appreciate the time we have together. That is special, to cherish it. I apologize for anything I've done to you in the past, and I promise not to leave you again. It's truly a blessing to get up in the morning, go to work, and see that pretty smile on your face when you come in from school, knowing I've been the best person I could have been today. So Trinity gets up, she reads this story, and then I ask her father to come up. And he talks about what it was like to be in prison, how he said he spends every day of his life being the best man he can be so that he doesn't miss any more of her life. He talks about how he of course, he used to sell drugs. He shared that he used to use drugs, and now he's an addiction and rehabilitation counselor helping other people. Now, the award ceremony is always on a Friday, usually the Friday before spring break. It's just after school. So you've got the ceremony, and I bribe the students with pizza. So they know if they come to the ceremony, and again, like, we're the only thing standing between them and spring break. I've got the ceremony where they're gonna find out the winners. We've got pizza, and you would expect, you know, it's usually 80 to 100 students with several adult guests. And I'm just listening to this man talk, and you look out at the crowd, at what should be a bunch of fidgety teenagers. No one moves. Not one person stirs, because they appreciate the truth of his story. And he is there, he is determined to speak to them in such a way that they don't make the same mistakes he makes. And you don't just see it, but in the stillness of the room, you can feel these students taking that in. And in those few minutes, they don't care about the pizza, they don't care about what they're doing for that weekend, they're just listening. So that I got to be part of facilitating interactions like that, you know, like, sign me up. Whatever I have to do to keep doing this, I will keep doing it. So that's just one of the best things I can tell you about what the Baldwin Prize is about. Is another photo from the award ceremony. The young woman in front is Samira Jackson. She was the first place winner from the 12th grade division. The reason she's doing that motion across her throat is because her mom was speaking. She had just read the essay she wrote about her mom, and now her mom was spilling the beans about Samira and their family. And Samira decided that while she loved her mom, maybe her mom was being a little too real. But you can also see, like, the gentleman behind Samira, the students were really into it. They appreciated it all. So that's, you know, one of the liabilities of the Baldwin Prize. If you participate, your business is going to be out in the streets, and maybe your parent or the person you interviewed is going to tell the whole school some stuff you'd rather keep to yourself. But I'd say it's worth that. Because of the pandemic, the ceremony, which is always in April, we couldn't do it in person. So instead, what I did was, each of the winners, I conducted an interview via Zoom with the winning essayist and the person they interviewed. So this winner is Clara Gillerin. She interviewed her grandma, Loretta, and the three of us had a conversation. And I did all of those interviews. There were 4 total, and put them in our newsletter. And, you know, to see how, so in this instance, what was the prompt this past year? The question for the interviewee was to tell the student, tell me about a moment when you really felt cared for. You know, where were you and who was involved in that? And Loretta talked about the moment when she lost her mom many decades ago, when her mom died, and her dad pulled her aside and said, I'm gonna love you like 2 parents now. I'm not just your dad. I'm gonna do what I can to fill in for your mom too. And the way that really cemented and developed her relationship with her dad. And I believe that was a story that Clara had never told before. So here you have, you know, one generation talking to another in a way that they simply hadn't done before. And it's all being facilitated by a school assignment. You know, how many school assignments do you hear doing anything like that? So if I sound a little emotional even now, it's because I am. I just love the people who helped me, you know, manage the Baldwin Prize. I'm just so grateful for their help, because this is what it can do. and I'll show you. This is a poster we did, I believe, in our second year. So this is the image of James Baldwin. We have exactly 103 student participants that year. That year, the prompt was write about a moment when you felt empowered. We took one sentence from every essay. So that means 103 statements. And I worked with a team of graphic designers to have those statements form, one point in a constellation that became, James Baldwin's face. And this became a poster that went out to every student. I still have copies of this poster, and whenever I go out and speak about the Baldwin Prize, I hand out this poster, and I just love, it's beautiful in its own right, and you see the students writing, and you get a sense of what it's about. So, I made a few notes about just the many, many things that come out of the Baldwin Prize. So I'll just tick through it now. For me, speaking very personally, the prize is a way for me to live out my values. So, there's what I get to do in my day job, which is definitely an extension of my values. The law degree is an extension of my values. But the Baldwin Prize, because it was something I designed, it just so squarely and succinctly hits that sweet spot I have of really bringing people together, of the importance of language and the written word, and helping people explore their shared humanity. So I love having a project that so squarely helps me communicate and live out my values. And other people, by doing this, other people are encouraged and welcome to do the same. I can't tell you how much help I get and support. My favorite example is a guy who used to be my boss when I worked at the Johns Hopkins Center for Talented Youth, Chuck Beckman. So Chuck worked in communications, and we knew each other as colleagues. We weren't especially close. Friendly, yes, but close, no. But when I sent out a call for volunteers, and remember, I need writing consultants, so dozens of them who can sit with the students and help them think about the prompt and what they want to write. So one year, Chuck says yes. So Chuck saying yes to that leads to his being a writing consultant. Like clockwork, I always know I can count on him. 3 years in a row, he spends an entire day at the school. And then he became so enamored of working with the students that he worked with our librarian, who was helping students with their International Baccalaureate essay. It's like 20, 30-page essay they have to write to secure their IB diploma, which is very valuable, and it can help you, be the equivalent of, if not an entire first year of college. Some colleges will give you a full year of college credit for having your International Baccalaureate diploma. So Chuck Beckman, after volunteering with the Baldwin Prize, is now, working without pay. He has helped dozens, if not more, students with their IB essay, and the number of semesters they get to save in college and thousands of dollars. And again, he said yes to one email ask, and now he's just an integral part of the way my high school operates. So that's the multiplier effect in terms of volunteer time. I also love that this gives me a substantive way to communicate and work with my friend and professional network from around the world. All of you on the Marshall Scholarship now, you come from all over in the US, you have these fantastic connections in the UK. So your social network is growing rapidly, and sometimes you may find it can be hard to keep in touch in a meaningful way with everyone, but the Baldwin Prize gives me a way to do that. So I'm just going to spend a few more minutes. So this has been my experience. How can you do something like this yourself? I would say first you want to answer a few key questions. You know, what is the way in which you can serve? What's a need that needs to be met? What do you really love, and what's a contribution that would be unique to you? And I think you need to align whatever project you land on. Needs to align your answers to all of those questions. So those are actually 4 questions, not 3. I meant to change that. But yeah, how can you serve? What's needed? What do you love? And what's a unique contribution that you can make? If you can come up with something that answers all of those questions, I think you're well on your way. I would say start small. You know, you can do a pilot. Yeah, you don't have to bite off everything all at once. Again, the Baldwin Prize, we had 2 students in our first year. We're now at 400 plus. If you would ask me to work with 400 students my first year, I wouldn't have been able to do it, but you can build over time. Inspire and activate your network. They will help you grow. Make it easy for people to help in different ways. So with the Baldwin Prize, you can donate a small amount of money, a large amount of money if you have it. You can be a writing consultant. You can judge. That, you know, the judging commitment is nothing more than committing to in a 2-week window, usually reading and scoring 6 essays, and people love it. And I would say revise your approach as needed. 2 examples of ways I've had to adapt. So the first time we did the writing consultations, it was, we had to set some kind of cap on how many students we could help. I think it was 100 students. It was a function of how many of my friends I could get to volunteer. So we made it so that students had to have written, at least begun to write the essay, or written a short statement of how they want to approach the essay. And then the teacher came to me and said, Lionel, the writing consultations are so powerful that we want them to be open to all of the students. So not just a fraction of them. So instead of serving 100 students, can you serve 400? And I got on the phone, I wrote emails, and we made it happen. We found enough volunteers. So now we know we have the capacity to serve 400 students a year. Another thing I had to work on was that, you know, Baltimore is a majority Black city, but many of the economic resources are not in the hands of Black people. And when you think about people who have writing experience, who can afford to take a full day off from work, and who were in many of those the folks who fit that bill in my personal and professional network were white. So as a teacher pulled me aside one year and said, Lionel, we love that you're doing this, but we need more people of color doing this as role models for our students. So, you know, that was a real check for me. Here I am, a person of color, like, what am I what kind of messages am I inadvertently sending students by not giving them more people who look like them? Now again, I think the community of writers in Baltimore, many of the people in the most privileged positions, you know, are white. So, but I had to find a way to respond to that gap. And working with other volunteers, I'd say we've gone from the first time we did the writing consultations, maybe, these are approximate numbers, maybe 8% of the volunteers were writers of color. This past time around, I think we were up over 20%. So again, I'm not where I want to be, but you have to be receptive to what people say they need. And I'm trying to be responsive to that. So before we close, I want to thank City College, who made the Baldwin Prize an integral part of what they do. My mom for instilling in me, Noreen Lane for instilling in me the values that shape the Baldwin Prize. Priya Saxena of Equitable Future Consulting is basically the scholarship coordinator. She coordinates the judging and does all kinds of amazing stuff. Hire Priya, she's fantastic. and lots of friends, donors, and volunteers. And ways you can help: you can read student work at thebaldwinprize.org, sign up for our newsletter for news on volunteer opportunities and other things we're doing, and donate at thebaldwinprize.org/donate. And do not hesitate to get in touch with me. Sorry to give you my Hotmail address. I have another address that's down right now, but you can definitely reach me there. Contact me on LinkedIn. So those are many of the things I know about the Baldwin Prize, how to stand up a nonprofit project from scratch. I actually talked a lot longer than I anticipated, but I will stop sharing, and I'm happy, very, very happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Lionel. I have a question for you. Have you thought, with now that we all live on Zoom, in the way of maybe thinking about trying to get writing consultants through doing it virtually, which might help you widen and broaden your field of people that might be able to do it?
Yes, you and I are on exactly the same wavelength. So I had a donor who had already donated generously earlier this year, asked how else they can help. And I said, one thing, I want to be able to cover more of Priya's time so that we can come up with a list of fantastic writers from across the country who, because they don't live in the Baltimore area, might not ever be able to do it in person. But yeah, if it's all online, they can participate. So yes, absolutely to that, Mary. This is actually a tremendous opportunity for us. And I hope to broaden the network of people who know about and can help the Baldwin Prize.
Does anybody else have a question? I think there's a few, there's not enough of us you can just unmute.
Lionel, I have a question. Thank you for this presentation. This is really interesting. I was wondering if you could talk about, it sounds like the sort of the creative aspect of the program, the Baldwin Prize program, and getting to interact with the students is like the really fun part. But I think many people look at the idea of setting something like this up and think like, but there's also the raising money part, which is maybe less fun and it sort of seems like this insurmountable, and never-ending task. Maybe you could talk about sort of how the balance of time works for that, and to what extent each of these is sort of self-sustaining at some point or becomes a bigger and bigger component of how you spend your time working on the program.
Yeah, I love that question. Thank you, Ben. So I would say, I think fundraising becomes possible and sustainable when you tap into something that is good and pure. It becomes infectious. And then a lot of your job is to channel that just as purely and as straight as possible. And I hate to sound like Field of Dreams, but if you make it, they will come. But it is true. So the kids are amazing, and they have so much life and so much energy. And working with the teachers, like I'm giving them a prompt and an activity and a process that draws the best out of them. So what I find is that if whatever I can do to put people in touch with that, they love it. The volunteers come into the school and you see their eyes getting wider. They have these epiphanies with the student. The volunteers, they feel needed. They feel valuable. So my job is to use different activities and modes of communication to get potential donors in front of that. And once they see and feel that, they give me their money. So a few examples. That's part of what the newsletter is about. Sometimes I just include, hey, here are photos from the award ceremony, plus links to the winning essays. And if I just you know, and I'm a writer in my own right. So if I just use my writing skills to like put people in the room, even though they weren't actually there. And then towards the end of every newsletter, it's just a donate link. I usually don't explicitly ask for money, but what tends to happen is that each year when I send that readout from the award ceremony, you know, several $100s come in. So that's one piece. Another piece is that you end up surprised by how generous some people are. I have one friend who, a family, they give on average $4,000 per year. And I know these people really, really well. I had no idea they even would have the means or the inclination to give at that high a level. And then people introduce you to other people. A good example of how the network and the base of supporters expands is that my first year, the first year we did the writing consultations, we had, I think it was exactly a dozen writing consultants. And I knew each of those people personally. This past, what was it? This past February, when we did the writing consultations, we had 44 consultants, and more than half of them I did not know personally, but it was because people spread the word, and we've been around long enough that, you know, a student had inspired a volunteer, and that volunteer was so inspired that they invited someone else. So likewise, my base of donors is growing. So again, I think the short answer is that, so yes, fundraising absolutely requires some work, but as with the poster, when people see the poster and the story behind that poster, there's one statement from every single student in this poster, and it forms the image of James Baldwin, and they go, you know, wow. So my biggest job is to get out of the way of the great things that the students are doing. And if I channel that purely, then I find I end up having, you know, enough.
Anybody else have a question? Okay, I think we are coming to an end. Lionel, that was really interesting. I've known about the work you've been doing on the Baldwin Prize for a few years, and I am always impressed by what you've done and the work you do with these young people, which is so important. Hopefully one day one of them will become a Marshall Scholar and follow in your footsteps. Wouldn't that be amazing? Thank you so much, Lionel. I think that was really interesting. I hope everybody here learned something, and I hope some of you will volunteer to help out with Lionel next year's project, because we're all available on Zoom. Don't ask me to do any writing expertise, so that's not my expertise.
Yeah, and I would just add, you know, even if you don't want to volunteer, if anything I've said has resonated with you and you want to learn more, you want to follow up, do get in touch. Write. Mary can give you my actually, I don't know if Mary has my phone number. Anyway, write me, I'll give you my phone number. You know, the idea, I just love that this started with an idea, and then it became a project, and now it's a project that might inspire other people to do their own projects. And you know, I never thought to give a presentation like this until Mary called me, emailed me several weeks ago. So if you want to do anything like this or learn more, use me as a resource. I'm happy to help. And thank you, Mary, for this opportunity.
Thanks, I know. And we have recorded this, and I'll share the chat. Oh, hang on. It's just a thank you. But I have recorded this, so I will share this on our website with the other Hangouts. I'll also share the chat so that everybody has it. So you've got Lionel's contact details. Thank you, Lionel, as ever. I really appreciate you doing it. Thank you, everybody, for coming. There's another one next week. Next week, we're hearing from Clara Shee, who is a female CEO of a Silicon Valley company, a very successful one, and she's going to talk about her journey from Marshall Scholar to CEO. So I think that'll be a really interesting one as well. So thank you very much, Lionel. Hopefully I will see you in person sometime soon, if they ever let me back in. So thank you very much. Thanks everybody for coming.
All right, take care.